Hi there, if you're a returning subscriber, welcome back, and if you're new to the channel, my name is Lucy. Be sure to hit that like button if you enjoyed this video and do not forget to subscribe. So in today's video, I'm going to be talking about my experience starting a new full-time job remotely and what that experience was like. Especially in this time when we're in a pandemic, there is a lot of companies who are going remote or are intending on going remote for at least until the end of this year or indefinitely. And so the company I am working at decided to also start most people remotely until next year or further notice. And so I'll share a little background about the company. So I am currently in a non-technical role at a high-growth startup company in New York City. They have offices in New York City, Charlotte, North Carolina, Irvine, and Oakland, California. I was fortunate enough to be at a really good company where they're allowing me to work remotely. So before I started my job around late summer, I decided to go home and spend some time with family. I decided to extend my stay. And my company was super nice and generous and allowed me to work remotely from Hawaii, even though I was supposed to work in the New York City office. Now I'm going to talk more about what the experience was like. So because of the big time difference, Hawaii is about 6 hours behind New York City, which means that in order for me to start work at 9 a.m. Eastern time, I had to start work at 3 a.m. Hawaii Standard Time. And that would have been rough. So thank goodness for this amazing company. They allowed me to work in the Pacific time zone with all the California teams. Instead of starting work at 3 a.m., I was able to start work at 6 a.m., which is a lot better. A week before I started, they shipped out my laptop for work, and during my first week I was able to log into a laptop, get used to the systems, and we had these Zoom calls where there were about 30 to 40 up to 60 new joiners where they discussed a little bit more about the company, the culture, the regulations, the rules, the benefits, and so forth. Pretty much a regular onboarding process, but this time all on Zoom. The most frustrating thing about the first week was setting up all the systems. I really didn't enjoy the process just because we were in a Zoom chat with about 30 new joiners and 1 or 2 technical support associates who were there to help us walk us through the process of getting every system set up. And so sometimes one person would have an issue where no one else had the same issue, so that took a little bit more time. A lot of it was just sitting there waiting and listening. So I didn't really enjoy that part, even though it was essential. So the first week I was literally on Zoom calls throughout the whole day. That's what it felt like, one after the next. It was a bit long just because I sat in one spot for the full day pretty much. I had breaks here and there, but it definitely felt very long, especially all the new information. During my second week, I received other equipment, including my brand new monitor, mouse, keyboard, and headsets. And so that was a lot easier. Instead of working from my small little laptop, I was able to use 2 screens now. In the second week, we continued to have more meetings talking about the company, the culture, and then now more particularly the role that I will be in. In the third and fourth week, we got pretty much all the technical systems out of the way, and we got an idea of what the company is and the culture and all that. Now we were able to really dive into the role. So we had specific trainers, had about 7 or 8 new joiners in the group where we kind of discussed different scenarios and situations we'll face in a role and how to tackle those situations. In the 5th week and onwards, we are fully ready to start our job. There's less Zoom calls, less meetings, not as many check-in points with the team and the trainers and the onboarding team, and more diving deep into this particular role and working specifically with my team. Now that was just a little bit about what the timeline was like and getting used to it. Now I'm going to go over my thoughts about what it's like to onboard and start at a new company remotely. I personally would not have chosen to start work this way if I had the choice. I would have preferred to done an onboarding process in person. I think it would have been a lot more engaging, and I would have been able to meet more of my colleagues and also the whole training class instead of doing this virtual setting, which I don't feel as much connected to the people that I work with. I had to get used to this virtual setting. I've never done this type of onboarding process where everything was through a Zoom call. I did really enjoy some of the breakout sessions that we had. So in these big Zoom calls, we had 30, 40, 50 new joiners. We sometimes were broken into different smaller breakout rooms where there was maybe 3 to 6 of us, and we were able to talk more about the company, the role, and really get to know each other. I enjoyed that part because I was finally able to have some sort of one-on-one or 1-on-5 connection with some people. The training weeks, we had to skip some activities that could only have been done in person, and that was a little sad because some of them seemed really fun. For me, just because I was switching from a completely different industry, from banking and financial services to a high growth startup, I wasn't used to a lot of the systems and technologies that they use, so it took a little while for me to get used to, and it wasn't as easy as doing it in person where I could just tap on someone's shoulders and ask them for help. Here I had to actually raise a ticket and wait for someone to respond to me. I think the hardest part about starting off remotely is just the communication. It's so hard to ask for help, especially when you're new, when you have so many questions. I use the internal messaging system to message someone a question. It might take them a little while to respond. It could be because they're on break or because they're busy doing something else. It can get a little frustrating waiting for a response from someone. I think the hardest part for me in particular is doing it with a big time zone difference. I understand I'm the one who chose to come back home, and so that's what I get for coming back home and staying back home. Waking up before 6 a.m. is a little rough. It's something I have to get used to, but it's also a good thing because I get off of work around 3 p.m. in the afternoon in Hawaii, so I'm able to do stuff right after work. A big challenging part of working remotely in a different time zone is my calendar. Really confused with the time zones, and sometimes I either missed a meeting or I came in late to a meeting, and it's still something I'm trying to get used to. My company did a really great job with the onboarding process and really trying to integrate all the new hires into the company. We planned out different virtual events that allowed us to meet and interact with our colleagues. There were a few happy hours and a few events here and there, but like I said before, I think I would have enjoyed it in person. Doing a virtual happy hour is just not the same as doing a real happy hour. Although there's good and bad about starting work remotely, I do enjoy being home and spending time with my family and still being able to work and get paid and even have a job. I really do appreciate working for a company that is so flexible. Overall, my experience starting a job remotely is something that will be memorable. Tips for starting work remotely is to keep your camera on during the Zoom calls. I know sometimes it feels uncomfortable to have your camera on because maybe you're camera shy or you just don't want your camera to be on. I recommend trying your best to keep the camera on just because you get to recognize faces and interact a lot better. If you're on a call with someone and they have their camera off, it's kind of hard to speak to them, and I think having your camera on is so important, especially in getting to know other people. Another tip I have is to ask questions. So yes, it may take a while for someone to respond to you, or yes, you may have to ask multiple people before you get an answer, but continue to ask questions. Treat it like a real work environment. Treat your relationships you build with your colleagues as if it was in the office, because eventually you'll have to go back to office, or eventually you have to work one-on-one with this person. It's better to build a good relationship from the beginning. And last tip is to make the best out of it. It's a hard situation for a lot of us to be in, especially in this time when everyone's pretty much remote and working from home. Everyone has their own problems, whether that be at home, taking care of their kids while they're working, or other distractions. Just make the best of the situation. Know that we're all going through this together. So that's it for this video. If you enjoyed this video, give this video a thumbs up. If you have any more questions about starting work remotely, or if you have any tips or suggestions about starting work remotely, leave it in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Bye! Now I'm gonna go over what it's like to